more about Lean Coffee Conversations. Thanks, Terani.
Thank you so much, Lydia. Much appreciated. It's not every day that, somebody gets to read out your bio. So I must say my ego is quite stroked a little bit there.
Thanks, Terani.
Thank you so much for the lovely welcome and thanks for having me as well. Good morning, everybody online. I hope you are doing well on this beautiful. I'm based in Johannesburg, so it's quite sunny, even though it's a little bit chilly, but the sun's out. So happy Friday. Wishing you a lovely day. And yeah, I think, let's kickstart. If you do have any questions throughout my presentation, you're more than welcome to, pause, interrupt, ask a question, make a comment section. Completely comfortable with that. And I think I should actually start sharing my presentation so that we can get started.
It was nice seeing your face in full, so thanks.
Wonderful. I'm glad. Um, so you can just let me know once you can see my screen.
We can see your
Thanks. And I
screen.
just wanted to ask, we can see the screen, but I think you may be on two screens, because we can also see your following. Yeah, if you put it now on slideshow, it should be fine.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry about that.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome. Okie dokes. So I think, to get started, I might just be a little vulnerable with you. And this is a secret between, ACMP and I right now, all of you on the call. When they reached out to me and they said, could you please share on Lean Coffee conversations? And I thought to myself, wow, what are the odds? Because the first time I ever received, a meeting invite to a Lean Coffee, the client that I used to consult for when I, used to work in management consulting used to like send us vouchers for, lots of work from home activities. And it was a virtual Lean Coffee. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, when are our coffee vouchers coming? So, for those of you that are not in South Africa, I was expecting a Mug and Bean or Vida Cafe voucher. And Mug and Bean and Vida are like, some good coffee places or places you can go to have coffee. And only to find out, on the day of the Lean Coffee, not receiving the voucher in my Outlook. And I then joined the meeting online and realized that, it had absolutely nothing to do with coffee. So I think maybe, the word, I just thought coffee and I thought, okay, maybe this is just, part of corporate lingo where, we're invited to chat about something important just with some coffees. So I think before I get started, I would like to, kind of find out from anyone in the audience how familiar you are with the concept of lean coffee. Have you heard it before? Have you been exposed to it? Just so that, I am able to actually provide an overview for you if you're not aware or familiar with the concept of lean coffee. And then I will just check the chat. Oh, I actually can't see the chat. Let me just see. Okay, there we go. I can see the chat. Nicola saying first time. Aliyah saying I've not heard about it before. Okay. I'm not familiar with the concept. Please explain. I'm not familiar. First time for me. This is my first session. Haven't heard of this before. Okay. Lovely seeing the comments come through.
So it seems that you have a group of novices, including myself here, Terani.
Wonderful. Okay. Yeah. Lots of the comments coming in, people saying it's the first time. A Mug and Bean voucher would have been my thoughts too, Camille. I totally agree with that one. First time for me. Okay, so I think most people are, we kind of share the same sentiment. Oopsie, let me just go back to my presentation. And this also, allows me the opportunity to actually paint a view of what lean coffees are, right? And they are, part of lean change management. Lean change management being, one of the practices that we can use through our change management. So if I can go to the next screen. and actually just talk about, what is lean coffee. So within this conversation, I'm going to be talking about the unconventional ways in which you can actually use lean coffees. And, prior to getting into that, I think it's important for us to actually delve into what lean coffees actually are. So these are structured, agendaless meetings. And basically, where the concept came from was there were two gentlemen in Seattle, which is in the States, who used to meet at Seattle. Not in South Africa, we have a coffee shop called Seattle Coffee Shop. So not that coffee shop, but they used to meet in Seattle in coffee shops where they would have meetings that are, more informal. Very casual and open, but obviously with a structure, right? And so what happened with, this concept is that it then became, a thing where everyone was like, okay, maybe we can actually, use this concept to have productive meetings. So like I'm saying, lean coffees are very structured, agendaless meetings where participants are the ones that actually get to build the agenda, right? So oftentimes we join meetings and there is an agenda provided for us already. But here with the lean coffee, for example, today, all of us on the call would get to choose what we actually want to talk about, of course, based on a particular theme. So I think for the sake of, this presentation, I may use the example of returning to the office quite a lot because I think it's something that most people kind of resonate with, especially post COVID-19. Another thing here about lean coffees is that not only is the agenda, created in a democratic manner, but the conversations are also created in a democratic manner. So people actually get to vote and choose, what topics should be discussed. So once again, if we're discussing going back to the office, if that is our theme and that is what we want to achieve, we would then, set up an agenda. So I would put a topic down and say, okay, we're discussing, returning to the office. Can we discuss, the core hours in which we go back to the office? Can we discuss the days in which we're going back to the office? And then each and every single person in the meeting would obviously, put down their ideas there. And then another thing is that these are conversations with a focused outcome. So you don't want to be in a session where, you don't really know what is the objective and what is the whole point of this. So the lean coffee, in as much as yes, it doesn't necessarily have, a strict agenda like any other meeting, but it does have a focused outcome. And it's also time-based, right? So oftentimes we'll, enter meetings and we run out of time and we find that you actually haven't even discussed, the main topics or the main objectives that we had hoped for. So in a nutshell, lean coffees are structured agendaless meetings with a focused outcome and that are time-based and also work really well within, ideally small groups of people. So think about 10 to 20 people where each person is able to, provide their input, be heard, and are able to collaborate in that small group. Does that make sense before I continue? You can just indicate in the chat for me, please.
You can also use the thumbs up if you want to react that way.
I see you've got quite a few thumbs up, please.
Okay. I'm seeing somebody saying 100% perfect sense. Okay. Cool. I'm glad. All right, so I'll move on over to the next slide. And now I'm just going to talk about the places and the ways in which you can actually use lean coffees. Okay. So the first one here is in conflict resolution. I think oftentimes as individuals, we are.
Yes.
Was that a comment from somebody? Okay, cool.
No.
All right, thank you. I think oftentimes as individuals, we're shaped by certain backgrounds, experiences, worldviews, and what I think is the right way or the right solution, don't necessarily think so. And it can be very easy, amongst teams and functions and divisions for people to experience some sort of conflict. And when we do experience that kind of conflict, it can be very difficult also to actually solve the problem. Because what you find is people then, tend to take things personally, emotions build up. I remember I once got an advice from someone when I just started out in my career, and they gave me advice and they said to me, if you're going to thrive in corporate, you need to learn how to separate emotion from logic. And I thought to myself, how? Like, what do you mean? I'm a human being. I have emotions, right? But I think it's such an important concept that speaks to this area of conflict resolution, because when you are trying to resolve any conflict within your workspace, it's very important for you to be able to provide, an eagle eye view and step away from the emotion side of it. And so, what lean coffees help with in terms of resolving conflict is they provide opportunities for there to be blameless problem solving sessions, right? And you're able to create trust amongst, the people that you're solving the conflict with. So, this is one idea in which you can use lean coffees. Another unconventional use case for lean coffees is remote team building. Post-COVID, a lot of us have been working from home, kind of feeling disengaged and disconnected from our colleagues. I nearly said our employees, from our colleagues and our teams. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to step away from connecting and engaging and building that relationship. And especially with, people working across different cities and countries and continents, remote team building in lean coffee style can actually help, close that gap or close that distance. So once again, like I mentioned, that these are structured agendaless meetings, and you can do that for your team buildings, right? Oftentimes people think team building, okay, it's just pizza and beers on a Friday after work, but we don't always have the time for those things. And so finding time, in the calendars for an hour or 30-minute lean coffee to foster that connection is one of the ways in which you can actually implement lean coffees in your environment. Another one is strategic planning. I think oftentimes, and you'll hear as I, go throughout the presentation, the thing that I highlight the most is around not having enough time. So I work in a very busy, fast-paced, high-performing environment, and a lot of the maybe I want to say like blockers that there's not enough time to do X, Y, and Z. We don't have enough time to sit for a full day and talk about strategic planning when we don't even know what it is that we actually want to talk about, which brings me to my next point, that they're kind of related to each other. Where you are able to use lean coffees to, actually generate ideas and, strategic plan, where you're able to then prioritize on any of the initiatives or ideas that you may come up with during brainstorming sessions. So because lean coffees, once again, are meetings that involve less people and don't take a lot of time, like I mentioned, between 30 minutes to an hour, 30 minutes, so basically 30 to 90 minutes. This provides you with the opportunity to really zone into what actually is important. What are some of the things that we need to prioritize on? What are some of the things that we need to eliminate? And maybe you can even plan ahead and say, you know what, for this particular lean coffee, because our theme is, strategic planning on a go live project, let's maybe put some of the other things, on the back burner, on the backlog, to then address them at a different meeting. So these are just some of the ways you can actually use lean coffee. So for conflict resolution, remote team building, strategic planning, as well as idea generation. I'm just going to pause a little bit here and ask if there are any questions from your side, maybe any comments you would like to add.
I'm hoping that you'll show us how to do it for one of these unconventional uses.
Do we want to pick a specific one, maybe, that we can kind of...
I don't know, we can ask the group if they want to pick one of these to see how you use it. I see there's one for strategic planning.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks, there's one for remote, two for strategic planning, one for remote team building. Maybe do the strategic planning one.
Okay,
Yeah, it looks like there's, so yeah, if you can show us how you use it there.
And remote team building and conflict resolution. The interesting thing about this exercise right now is that people are coming up with ideas and we are basically getting to pick which one to talk about based on the one that has, the most votes, or the one that is popping up most commonly in the chat. And that's exactly what a lean coffee is. We come into a room and we decide, okay, what exactly do we want to talk about? And, with strategic planning, it's often like a day's event from 8 till 5, or maybe, 3 days. And there are certain, initiatives that a business may have, or, a function may have. And oftentimes when you have those conversations and those decisions, you'll find that when you go into that session, there's firstly, okay, what's on our radar? What are some of the initiatives that we have? And it could be time-based. So for the next 6 months, for the next year, but this allows you to actually even break down, those initiatives into bite-sized chunks. The metaphor eating an elephant, piece by piece, in bite-sized chunks. And that's exactly what, Lean Coffee can help you do in strategic planning, where you are then able to prioritize on those initiatives. So ideally, you could have lean coffees in person, and you could have it remotely. There are pros and cons for both. I personally prefer remotely, and please don't now go have a remote lean coffee strategic planning because I said so. I'm just stating my preference for it. And I think because of the tools that are available, which I'll share in the next couple of slides, you're actually able to, maintain anonymity and, bias as well, remove any bias, because oftentimes you'll find that people are not very comfortable to, bring up ideas and share, their own opinions. And you also have some people in teams who, you've got the dominant voices, you've got the extroverts, and then you've got the introverts. So people speaking more than others. And what a lean coffee allows you to do on one of the platforms, lean coffee table, is you can actually create, an anonymous section, so that when people do pitch in ideas, their identity is concealed, right? And then in person, lean coffees, for that one, you would obviously, kind of have to create like some sort of jar or like a bucket, create sticky notes. People write on sticky notes, put them in the sticky notes, and then, somebody must then collect the jar and then, pick the sticky notes. So it's a little bit more time consuming and requires a bit more effort. And when you are the facilitator, that can, kind of take more of your time. And that's simply why I prefer, online lean coffees. So based on that, the fact that you are able to actually create topics and then decide which ones are most important, where you can actually vote and say, okay, for example, we want to go live with a new software. Do we go live in 3 months? Do we go live in 6 months? Do we go live, in a year's time? And then each person can kind of vote, on the, if you are doing it remotely, on that specific tool, and then in person on the specific sticky notes that you would have placed on the board, right? So that's how it would work. And I see Geraldine is saying that is great. It would be nice to move beyond sticky notes. Yeah, definitely agree. And save some paper as well. So these online tools are where you can come in with your team, ideally, like I mentioned, between 10 and 20 people, and then set the scene where you decide, okay, this is what our focus is, or this is what our objective is for this particular meeting. And so, team, let's get to creating the agenda. And then each and every single person, you would ideally then share the link, and each and every single person accesses that link, and then they create an agenda, and then you all vote for which topic you want to discuss based on the theme that you would have set, right? After that, you then create, based on the agenda that you have, start having the conversations. So what about this particular thing do we want to talk about? So for example, if you had about 5, agenda items, suggestions, pardon me, the one that has the most votes is the one that you would then talk about. If there is a tie, you can then decide to go for a second round of voting. Based on that, you then discuss, okay, what do we actually want to talk about for this particular initiative? I hope that's clear. And then you set a timer for it. So I think that's, one of my favorite things because I'm such a talker. I love to talk. And sometimes you can, kind of go beyond the time that has been set in a normal meeting, but in a lean coffee, it's structured. So once again, the facilitator would then determine, okay, is this topic worth, us discussing it for 5 minutes or for 2 minutes? And then usually there's a timer that goes off once again, which is why I like, the online tools, because then you can set a timer and then the timer goes off. And once the timer goes off, that conversation basically gets wrapped up and you can only revisit it at the end when you are now, kind of concluding your topic ideas. I'm seeing a comment here from Debbie, and she's saying, I assume for strategic planning, the time period for planning is also democratic, e.g. 6 months versus 12 months versus a 2-year horizon, then going to topics we want to talk about and prioritize. Exactly that. And, within the Lean Coffee conversation as well, those specific topics that you are talking about, like I just mentioned, will have a specific time that is allocated for discussing them. That way, everybody gets to provide input and share, their own ideas, but in a very quick, fast-paced manner. I'm seeing Aura saying lean coffees can also be good for organizations or teams that struggle with psychological safety and would like to become more transparent. Definitely agree with that. Thank you for that comment, Aura. Okie dokies. So I think I can move on and then go to my next slide. So, perfect segue into, the ways in which we can adapt to using lean coffees remotely. The digital tools. Sorry, I'm seeing like a yellow line on my screen. Is that from me or is that from Zoom?
It is from you. For some reason, you can write on Zoom. You can also erase it, but I think
Okay.
I can't explain to you now how to erase it. So maybe we just continue with the yellow line.
Perfect. I'm sorry.
Except if somebody else can very briefly tell you how to erase it, but I'm not so au fait with it.
Okay. If anyone is, if everybody is comfortable with it, I think we can just continue. Apologies for that. But anyways, as we were saying, so let's look at, some of the digital tools that you can use. You've got the ideas board, Miro or Miro, as well as Google Jamboard. Before I then continue, I see Hemari. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. He's got a hand up.
Yeah, sorry, Tarani. I just want to say that I think it's one of the delegates in the room that accidentally drew the yellow line on the side. So if you go to the taskbar, it pops out, and then I think somebody accidentally clicked on the pencil, and they can just go and click on the eraser and remove it for you if it bothers you.
Okay.
Only the person who accidentally drew it can remove it. So,
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Amari.
no
But I see
problem.
now everybody's trying to draw. Okay, guys.
I tried to remove it for you with my eraser, but my eraser can't remove it for you. So sorry.
Okay, no worries. Thank you so much. Okay,
You're welcome.
I think we'll just leave it for now. Thank you. So like I was saying, with digital tools, my personal favorite is Miro, as well as Ideas Board, because here you are able once again to, populate your ideas on the board, and then get each and every single person in the meeting to actually vote on, the most topic that they want to discuss. When you are facilitating a lean coffee in person, you can also use, Miro board where you would have somebody in the room, connected to their laptop, probably a projector or a screen of some sort, and is able to, kind of navigate for you, maybe through sharing links, and then you can do it on your phone if you are comfortable to use your phone, or you can have your laptops, but you are basically in the room. So it would kind of take like a hybrid setting, if you know what I mean, because you are there physically, so it is in person, but then you are using digital tools. The nice thing about this one is that, with digital tools, you are able to create like some sort of summary, and especially nowadays, with the introduction of AI, kind of create like a meeting summary of, the conversation that was had based on the sticky notes that you would have populated online. Your information is safe, so you can always access it at a later stage versus sticky notes and whiteboards in, offices that can get torn and thrown away. And then another thing, which we can use remotely in coffees, particularly like I mentioned, in the time of post-COVID-19. And I think a lot of us are, often chasing deliverables and, we're in meetings throughout the day. So there's, team and Zoom fatigue and just meeting fatigue as well. And so what lean coffees do, because they are, so short and typically should be high energy, right? Because of, the time constraints per topic, is that this helps you overcome that Zoom or Microsoft Teams fatigue, because then you are able to create regular breaks in between. And once again, even your
Shirani,
yes.
sorry, there's a question from Peter Cully. He's asking, do you feel topics tend to be selected by group voting, which can favor popular or safe subjects over critical, but less exciting ones? Also, introverted or junior team members may hesitate to propose or vote for challenging topics.
It's a long-winded question. Okay, so basically, our topic selected by group voting. So I think in the next slide or the next couple of slides, I've got something around, dominant personalities, where sometimes in meetings, topics can be selected by people who, are, i.e., the popular ones, number one. Number two, and by the popular ones, I mean the popular people, right? Or they can select topics because they feel like, this is what everybody would want to hear in a typical meeting. But the reason for a lean coffee is that you are trying to remove that bias. You're trying to remove, people from selecting the things that are typically, favorable and admissible as well. And so it provides you with an opportunity to say, okay, this is, and I think it was Aura who mentioned a comment about psychological safety, that this is what I would like to talk about. But generally, in a typical meeting, I don't necessarily feel confident, or I don't know how to articulate, this particular thing that I would like us to discuss. So because of the, anonymous settings that you have in Lean Coffee, you are actually able, or rather you should feel encouraged, to be able to present topics that are not necessarily going to be liked by everybody. But the nice thing is that everybody actually gets to talk about them, depending on, how much time is being allocated for that specific session. So I hope that answers your question, part of your question.
100
Peter,
participants.
who had asked. And then I'm seeing Huizione, that's a beautiful name, by the way, is asking, at most, how long should the lean coffee meeting take? Not more than 90 minutes. Because once again, you want people to still be engaged, and still show up. Oftentimes in a meeting, after an hour, people start to drop off. They've got other meetings to attend to, so you want to try keep it to an hour. But if there are, more topics that you feel need to be discussed, especially if it's a sensitive matter, things like conflict resolution, for example. You don't want to shut people down, and make it seem like you're rushing resolving the problem. So maybe in that kind of context, you could set it for 90 minutes, but ideally, nothing more than that, just to maintain that high energy and people actually still, engaging in the sessions. Seeing another comment here, someone is saying that lean coffee is great for sharing ideas and surfacing concerns, but do you feel they are designed for making complex decisions or assigning clear action items? So I think that's a two-part question, Peter, making complex decisions or assigning clear action items. So oftentimes when you do want to make, complex decisions, there's a lot of context that goes into that. And a lean coffee is where that context can actually be provided. And, the foundation is built for other meetings that you may have. And because, let me once again bring up the example of returning back to the office. If this is the decision that, business is wanting to make or a specific function is wanting to make, it is going to require lots of things to consider. So you can't necessarily make that sort of decision within, 90 minutes where there are 20 people in the room and each person, or rather each topic is being discussed for 20 minutes. For 2 or 5 minutes. So in that context, A lean coffee would be more like providing, a foundation to allow you to then be able to make better informed decisions when you are, executing on a complex decision, such as returning to the office. And it's, also like a strategic decision. However, in terms of, assigning clear action items to, the team members, that can be very useful because everybody gets an idea of what is expected of them. And should they need to, gain more clarity or follow up, then they are more than welcome to do so with the relevant person outside of the meeting. Sorry if I'm talking fast, I'm just cognizant of time. I'm seeing Aaliyah's got a comment that says, with in-person lean coffees, how can a facilitator ensure engagement amongst a team that is not very talkative, participative, but also in a way that promotes psychological safety? Love that question. So this is where more effort would be required from you, right, as the facilitator in person. So you would create or rather have some sort of sticky notes, and then you could have a jar or a little cup. Everybody writes their topics and their ideas. You get to collect them and put them in a jar, and then afterwards get somebody else, just to save time, basically pick out topics and then read them out, and then you can put them on the board. Then if I have again, let's make an example. If there are 5, topics on there, number 1 to number 5, and I feel like, okay, conversations should be had about topics number 1, number 3, and number 4, I get to write on a piece of paper, number 1, number 3, and number 4. Again, the facilitator or, maybe a volunteer or somebody else can come, collect those sticky notes, put them in a jar again, and then, pick them out. And then that's when you get, your most voted topic. So in that way, you are able to create psychological safety because, you don't see the people who've written, or selected number 1, number 3, and number 4. Unless if maybe you have like different color sticky notes, and then, I saw that, oh, okay, Debbie used the pink sticky notes and somebody else used the blue sticky notes. But ideally that should help you, get create that psychological safety. And also you can ask, people to then share their ideas, obviously without picking and saying, okay, can the person who selected number 3, tell us why they selected number 3? And obviously then that would make the person feel like, okay, this is not, anonymous anymore. And I'm seeing a comment here from Kate saying that we break the group up into breakout rooms to all discuss the same topic and then bring the group back together to collate ideas, thoughts, discussed in those groups. Love that. Except the only difference with that one again is if you are splitting them into group discussions for a specific topic, then that once again might not, remove that anonymous factor. But I think it was based off the comment that Debbie made. Could you split people into breakout rooms to discuss multiple topics at once, or should the whole groups discuss topics together? If you are splitting people in breakout groups, that's going to take up more time for you because it's still, the thing of, okay, you're going to be part of group 1, you're going to be part of group 2, you're going to be part of group 3. And then the people have to still go and then they, kind of form or establish some sort of rapport when they're in their groups, and then get to the topic. And remember, again, you've only got about 60 minutes or, 90 minutes, depending on the topic or the theme that you're discussing. So that might take up a lot of time. And that's why it's, advisable to have it within groups of 10 to 20 people where you don't necessarily need, to break people into groups. So if you have a group of about 10 people, everybody can kind of pitch their idea as well as provide commentary on the conversation that is happening. Okay. Do you mind if I come back to the comments a bit later on? Is that okay? And then I can just continue with the presentation. I promise I'll come back to the comments. Okay. Then another point here is around equal participation. Like I mentioned, where, there's a structured turn in taking, a structured approach in people taking turns within the team. And this is, just to ensure that, everybody has an opportunity to speak and everybody has an opportunity, to raise their concerns. And once again, if you aren't going the, anonymous route and you'd like to, kind of probe on people who have presented particular topics, then you're more than welcome to do so, but ideally, because it is a small group and you're trying to create that trust and foster, engagement, then you are able to, allow the room to be free enough where everybody's able to provide their own opinions, and their voices are being heard, and everybody's able to participate in the session. A last example I've got on here is around time zone considerations. For example, I think it's Peter who's joining from Australia. We've got people that work in teams and environments where, like I'd mentioned earlier, everybody's remote, but in different parts of the world. So Lean Coffee allows you also to be able to, gather people in one room, and where decisions can be made, in a fair, democratic manner, and meeting times can be rotated as well to accommodate the relevant people in the different spaces that they do exist in. And then how do we link this to other agile frameworks? Because Lean does come from agile thinking, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this at the beginning, that the concept of Lean Coffee itself, the coffee was just to symbolize that it is an informal conversation, right? And then the lean part of it comes from agile thinking and agile mindset and ways of work. So the ways in which you could use this is through Scrum. In Scrum, we know that this is where you would review any backlog items that you have prior to any sprints coming up. You could use it in Kanban, where you are actually identifying any gaps that exist within, some of the initiatives that you may have, and then find ways to continuously improve. You could also use it in design thinking. I think design thinking is often a time-consuming process where you've got to think about, okay, what's actually going on? What is the problem? What are we solving for? How are we going to solve for it? Does this, solution work? Let's break down the solutions that we have for this problem that we've ideated, and then pick the best one possible. So in this way, you could actually shorten that process where you're actually able to focus on the main things and the main priorities for that specific project, right? And then you could also use it in retros. Retros, we know that they often happen after sprints, in an agile environment, but where you could bring in, the concept of Lean Coffee here, where you're actually able to address any unresolved, topics flexibly that may have occurred throughout the sprint in your environment. And I'm just going to go to the next slide, then I'll pause for any comments or questions after this particular slide. So here we're looking at, some of the common challenges that do exist, and how Lean Coffee kind of combats, those challenges. And one is with dominating voices. Like I mentioned earlier, we work in dynamic teams where there are people, who are extroverts and some who are introverts, and there are people who have a certain level of confidence and feel like, what, I've been here for a certain number of years, I know what's right. And so Lean Coffee's kind of, remove that. And through the different facilitation techniques, you are then able to balance participation where everybody in the team is actually able to provide, their own input. The second one here is sticking to an agenda. In meetings, we know that, you can have 5 agenda points and they all don't get discussed because we've run out of time. So the time boxing part of having Lean Coffees keeps discussions, focused and efficient, where you are able to actually get through, and achieve the outcomes of the meeting. The third one is around maintaining engagement. Where you can actually introduce, gamification during Lean Coffees. And gamification is, something that I find very interesting, and I'm also, quite passionate about, but this is not the topic for today. But this is where you can actually introduce gamification, and people will actually feel more energized and, more motivated to actually participate as well. And this is the perfect way to introduce those, once again, in time-based sections. Then we've got documenting outcomes, and I spoke about this one earlier on when I was referring to the digital tools, where the nice thing about it is you are able to actually capture any insights, and have them safely secured on a drive somewhere, or online and access it at any time. And to Peter's question, you're able to determine action items for the team or the people that are actually in that particular room. So now I'll pause. Are there any questions? And I think maybe I can also ask a question around where do you see yourself using, lean coffees in your environment? Okay, Philip, you've got a hand up. Hello, good morning. It looks like you're speaking, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Perfect.
That's my earphones have gone. Look, just a quick question. I like the idea. What I hear you say is that it's all about democratizing the discussion, and then through that you create a lot of context. Whereas your classical process is let all the gripe come on the table, and then we sort them and get priority, and then we dialogue, and then we go on. But for me, is what's not clear is the outcome. How do you still have a structure that can lead you to the outcome? In other words, the promise that you made in the beginning in terms of outcomes. So that's just my question.
Sure, no problem. So once again, we're using the return to office example. And the conversations that are being had are around the core hours, the number of days, which teams go in, which part of the office do they sit at, is it on the second floor, the fifth floor, et cetera, et cetera. So as we are having those discussions, within 5 minutes sprints, if you will call them that, the facilitator would be the one to kind of provide a conclusion on the said, conversation or discussion that was being had at that particular time. And if you're using a platform like, for example, Lean Coffee Table, you are actually able to see, what the conclusion was for that particular topic. And I think that's why earlier I'd mentioned that, you're able to get action items going forward because you're able to get the conclusion on, okay, if everybody has said, look, we don't feel comfortable coming in on Fridays and Mondays, but we're happy to do Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. But somebody else had, raised something else. Once again, you are able to, at the end, of that specific topic, then vote once again, right? So there is the democracy part of it just coming in often throughout the conversation, where each specific conversation for each agenda is had. A conclusion is generated based on everybody's thoughts in the meeting. So I hope that does make sense, because when you get to the end of your meeting by, the 60 minutes or the 90 minutes, then we all are aligned. And the nice thing is you can actually choose to increase time. If, for example, we stuck at, okay, nobody wants to come in on a Friday, but Fridays is when we have our team buildings. So let's set up another 5 minutes. And again, you can decide, are we agreeing to, discuss this topic for 5 more minutes or for 3 more minutes? Or do we want to completely close it? And then that way, everybody, like I'd mentioned, opinions are heard.
Okay. Thank you for that. Can I, as a last comment, and then I'll keep quiet, just
Sure.
ask the convener to list us at some stage all the applications that you use, because I think that plays an important role. So thank you for that.
No problem. All good. I'll just place them in the chat when we're done. Susan, please just remind me. And then I'm seeing some comments in the chat that I want to have a look at. Also cognizant of time. Geraldine is saying, love that Maleboho. It creates a more relaxed engagement that allows people to open up, can also be executive. -2 to 3 as an example. Andre is saying, so often, I think, clients ask for facilitated groups focus group sessions and online. At that, the lean coffee concept seems to me is rather aligned to the focus group approach. Correct. Yes, definitely. It is focus group discussions. Debbie's saying when you use it, do you start off with a desired goal? E.g., our goal for the session is to get everyone to return to office for 3 days as mandated by the CEO. Correct. So when you're sending out your meeting invite, for example, you could just say lean coffee, return to office. And if, the CEO's mandate is specifically 3 days, so that's not something you can debate in the session, but you would go into the session to actually then discuss, okay, what are those 3 days and why those 3 days are important for us, based again on the objectives that were set by the CEO. Are we returning back to the office because we want to, improve collaboration? So how can we improve collaboration, when we do go back to the office? Are we going back to the office because we want to create and foster team dynamics? How can we do that? And those are just examples that I'm giving that could possibly come up in that specific conversation. Okay. All right, I think I can continue for now. I'll come back to the comment section. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Terania. I think, there are so many comments and questions that we may not be able to get to all of them in this session, but what we can do afterwards is to give you the chat, and then if you don't mind, then we can get answers to some of those questions that are being posted, and then we'll send it out to everybody who attended.
Perfect, Lydia. Thank you so much. Happy to do that. Okay, so here we've just got, some advanced facilitation techniques, where you can actually use, Kanban boards. I would hope that some of you are quite familiar with Kanban, and this is just one of the ways in which you can facilitate that. I'm just pressed for time because I know that most people did say that at the beginning they were going to drop off around 11, so pardon me that I'm going too fast with this particular section. But another tool here is voting methods, where you experiment with dot voting and weighted ranking. So what you can do is, have your sticky notes with your topics, and then each person is able to, grab a marker, grab a pen, and then, go add votes. And the topic that has obviously the most votes, or the most dots, would be the one in which you can then facilitate your session. And then we've got rotating facilitators, which is, I think one of the main things to also kind of create that psychological safety, because oftentimes we get comfortable with people. We know, it's Terani who's going to be facilitating, and maybe she's my work bestie. So, the engagement or the participation may not necessarily be as desired. And so, or maybe it may be more than desired because, this is my favorite person. I mean, biases do exist in the workplace, and, we are aware of that. So rotating facilitators removes that aspect and actually encourages, diverse leadership and fresh perspectives where, I may be skilled in a particular area, somebody else may be skilled in a different area, and they're able to bring in, that diversity and those fresh perspectives in the session when you do have rotating facilitators. And once again, you can actually select, the facilitators where, okay, these are the people who feel, they have something to share and are comfortable to share it. So out of these, 5 people, once again, for example, how are we going to rotate it, on a monthly basis? So in February, who's going to go in March, who's going to go in April, who's going to go in, May, June, July, etc., etc. And that will once again just create, different high energy experiences in your lean coffee conversations. Okay, that is my last slide, the next one. So Lydia, do we have time to take like maybe 2 more questions, and then I can hand it over back to you after I close? I'm going to close in my next slide.
Yeah, no, you can take a few more questions.
Okay. Mabatu is saying Mentimeter is a lovely voting tool. Also, definitely 100%. And with Mentimeter, participants are able to actually also provide reasoning as to why they want specific things being discussed. So you could use Mentimeter, especially if you're doing it online. Bernadette is saying, I'm finding this very useful. Would the recording be made available to us or a transcript? Okay, I think ACMP will make the recording available. Aliyah is saying Kahoot, Blooket, and quizzes are also awesome tools for high engagement. I've never heard of Blooket before, so I'll definitely give that one a try. Let me see what other question there is. Kabile or Kabile, apologies if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but I think it's Kabile, is saying, I realize I've been having coffee conversations and the struggle for me has been balancing the dominant voices. The time boxing techniques will be interesting to implement. I think with the dominant voices, you'll always have this, in every setting where, like I mentioned, that people's personalities are different and their backgrounds are different and their confidence levels are different. But within lean coffee conversations, what you try and do is everybody has the opportunity to speak, but you also try and limit because of that time-based aspect of it. I'm not going to speak, for the entire 2 minutes if 2 minutes is being allocated to the session. Within the 2 minutes, ideally you would like to get, if there are, 10 people in your session, maybe at least 5 people speak, and then you rotate as well, the type of people who get to share per topic or per conversation as you go along. And that is within your control as a facilitator. So you can, gauge that and say, okay, you know what, within the first conversation, these 5 people were the ones that spoke the most. So for the next conversation, I'm going to start it off when we are discussing this particular topic. I'm going to start it off by, prompting the other 5 that were quiet in the room that didn't, speak for the previous conversation. So I think that's more of something that is in your control as the facilitator. But once again, the platform itself as a Lean Coffee does allow you with that opportunity. Exactly, Debbie. Debbie's saying, for dominant voices in a safe space, we ask specific people for their inputs and we position that up front. We will ask everyone to contribute and keep track of who has contributed and who hasn't. Exactly, yeah. So I hope that answers your question. And then let me also be, a good person and go to my next slide and not waste your time. So in conclusion, lean coffees are more than, just general meetings that you have. I think oftentimes, like I'd mentioned earlier, we're chasing deliverables, head down in our laptops, meeting after meeting and presentation after presentation. But lean coffees provide that space for us to, gain some energy, walk away empowered, walk away motivated, walk away with clarity because we know what is expected of us. We know what to execute on, when to execute on it. We know the support systems to reach out to, right? Because within that meeting, you are able to identify people who are, for example, like I discussed earlier, skilled in a particular topic and say, okay, you know what, if this is my action item that I have to deliver on in the next 2 weeks. I heard, Mark saying X, Y, and Z in that lean coffee conversation. So I'm now able to, reach out to Mark and say, hey, could you, provide more insight for me on this? And that would come from the psychological safety that has been created in that specific meeting. So it's not just another meeting that we're putting in our calendars, to have a meeting about a meeting, but this is a meeting where, you're able to create, or rather foster collaboration and growth. And then you've got continuous adaptation, right? Where you can always improve on the format of your lean coffees. You could, start out with a check-in. How's everybody doing? Has it been a good week this week? And then maybe change the facilitators as well. When you realize that, maybe Tirani is a bit more strict in the lean coffee conversations. And so let's get someone else, in the next conversation that is a bit more lenient or things like that. You can always, identify gaps for improvement. And lastly, it allows you to actually just try something new where you can implement, a fresh idea at the end of the lean coffee conversation that can be implemented in the next coffee conversation. But ultimately, this is really about, providing teams and people with the opportunity to have their voices heard, feel empowered, so that they are able to, bring the best. Oftentimes when people feel heard and feel seen, and I think it's usually a cry, people just want to be heard, people just want to be seen, but they want to also realize value in that. And Lean Coffee Conversations are that platform where you are able to, gain, that value where you feel seen, you feel heard, you feel empowered to do your job better. You feel connected with your team members. Psychological safety and trust is fostered. You feel comfortable to collaborate. You know who to collaborate with also, right? So building relationships with certain stakeholders, if you are having it, maybe at a strategic level with different clients. But that's it in a nutshell. I hope I didn't bombard you with a lot of information. I know it can be a lot to take in, but hopefully you can reflect. And yeah, some of the tools that were suggested in the comments around Mentimeter, Kahoot, Ideas Board, you're more than welcome to use those. But I would also suggest that you check out Lean Coffee Table. There is a free trial available on there that you can, test out, play around with it, and see if this is something that you and your team can actually utilize. And just have, great empowered teams. And I think
I know,
my presentation. So Lydia, I'll hand over back to you, and then maybe we can address some of the comments.
Thanks, Terani. I think I've just seen one more question that we can answer in this session, and then the rest we'll send in the chat to you, and we can then get back to everybody who attended. There was one question whether people won't see this as time wasters because they have many deliverables to chase. So maybe if you can look at that question.
So, and I think it's something that I mentioned earlier that, a lot of the times in the workplace, there's this culture of the reason why people have meeting fatigue is because they feel like they're not adding any value. And we go into with different people who are providing, not different people, sorry, with often the same type of people who are providing input, not allowing others to share their own opinions. And it can seem like, this is a waste of my time because I'm going into a meeting, I'm going to be listening to, this person just basically dictate for us or just tell us what to do, and we don't get to feel, like we're adding any value. And that's why those meetings, we shy away from attending certain meetings, and it's like, oh, I don't have time for that. But there's a saying, especially in the relationship world, that you make time for the things that are important to you. And so with Lean Coffee Conversations, they create that culture where you feel not only as an individual important, that you are able to contribute, and make a difference in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't always have to be grand and big, but they create opportunities where you actually look forward to attending those meetings because you know that you are going to contribute something valuable, and it's not just going to be a meeting, where you just sit and listen and absorb information, and oftentimes don't even have the opportunity to ask for clarity, or probe at some point. So I think maybe if you are working in an environment that, has a lot of meetings and people don't have time, because they're chasing deliverables, start by, a 30-minute Lean Coffee conversation where you set that up in people's diaries, maybe on a Friday afternoon. And maybe, the way in which you can approach it is through the team building aspect, right? Where you want to first create that psychological safety. You want to create an environment where people actually realize that, okay, if we are having these lean coffees for 30 minutes every Friday and the agenda is a bit different, we're not talking about, tasks being delegated to us, but it's actually where I get to be seen and my voice is heard and trusted, then I might just show up, you know? So you could start with a 30-minute lean coffee for the next 2 Fridays, see how that goes, create a different energy, a different vibe, you know, like the Gen Zs call it, and then take it from there, see how it goes. But I would really give it to the facilitator to actually also be the one that creates an environment where you are not just speaking at people, but, you know, facilitating a conversation and allowing everybody to have their voices and input heard. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Terani. I think we can spend a lot more time on this, and we'll definitely invite you to our conference next year. I think you've cemented it for me. I was thinking of gamification in change management, and you can also then be there at our conference telling us more about that. But thank you so much. I'm just going to do the last, tell people what's coming still, but we really enjoyed, and I think we would love to see you again at one of our webinars. So thank you so much for making the time to chat to us.
Thank you, and thanks for having me, Lydia.
Thanks, Terani. In terms of what's coming for us is the November webinar. We'll tell you more about that. There's an ACNP Global One-Day Conference. Then we are thinking about a joint conference by the Southern African, New Zealand, and Australia and Singapore ACNP chapters in the second half of 2026. And then the webinar in March on neurodiversity in change management by Sarah Babb. So there's quite a lot coming. The webinar in November is about navigating change through neuroscience. We've had some presentations on that, but we are definitely going to hear more about it then from Melanie Franklin. I think she's from Canada. Then there's a Change London in September. And we would love your feedback. Elise has put in the chat a link. Usually we get only about 10% of you who attend these webinars who take the time to answer the 3 questions. But we would like to tell you that Survey Karma is real. If you spend 60 seconds answering those 3 questions while we're handing out the gifts and the prizes, the universe might just reward you with green robots, free Wi-Fi, or a great parking spot. So please look at that link. You can even take a photo. If I move this here, you can quickly scan the QR code before I move on. But let's see whether we can break that 10% limit of feedback that we get. It's Terani's first time, so she would love to hear what's the feedback that you would give to her. Thank you. So let's see who will get the sponsored ACNP membership for a year. Remember, we have two sponsors here, 2 sponsorships. So let's hear if we get the name from Elise and you are here. Please unmute immediately, because if you don't answer, we assume that you're not in the room anymore, and we'll move on to the next person. So Elise, who's the first name that you've drawn out of the hat for the sponsored membership?
Let me see. It's Malibogo from Botswana.
Malibogo from Botswana.
Botswana.
Okay.
Malibogo, are you here? Okay.
Doesn't sound like it. Then
okay, the second name that she drew was Victor Letwiti.
Malibogo sent a message in the chat as soon as you said her name. I think she can't speak. She says I'm here.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
she's
okay.
definitely here. I also saw it.
Well done.
Okay, now thanks, Malibogo. You are then the first one who gets the ACNP sponsored membership, and then the second name, Susan, that you mentioned
was Victor. Victor, are you here?
Good morning. Yes,
Victor,
I
so
am here.
well
Yes.
done. Congratulations, Victor and Malebogo.
Thank you.
You can just contact, please contact Elise. She will put her details in the chat now. And then she will make sure that you get registered then as and get the ACMP membership. So congratulations. And you can also just
Thank
put
you.
your details in the chat, your email addresses, so that if you can't get to her, she can get to you. Then I think I'm feeling generous. So there's 2 people who will also get the 5 card packs of the psychological safety card game. Susan, who is the first name that Elise drew for that?
It's Fatima Patel. Is Fatima here? Fatima. I can see her.
Doesn't
She's
sound like
on,
it.
but it doesn't look like she's here. And
Okay,
then,
so if Fatima is not answering, then we move on to the next.
okay, the next person
Fatima also mentioned then, sorry guys, yeah, that
can't
she's here.
unmute. Oh, okay, we see that.
Okay, so Fatima, if you can then also just drop your email address in the chat, so or get hold of Elise at the ACMP SA, then we'll arrange for you to get those cards. And then the
And it
second name?
is Geraldine. Is Geraldine here?
Yay! Yes,
Okay,
I'm here.
Geraldine. So Geraldine, if you can just contact Elise or drop your
Yes.
email, then we'll make sure that it gets delivered to you. But
Yay, thank you.
congratulations to all our winners. You see, it pays to stay till the end. So congratulations. Thank you again to everybody. Thank you, Tarani. I must say, I love lean coffees now and don't expect the voucher. But I think it can work well. Even recently, I had to give feedback on engagement survey results, and people had to select priorities based on the results that they will pay attention to. So I can see that it will work there too. So thank you again. We really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who was here. We'll see you in November again. Thank you very much for making the time to support the ACMP SA chapter and to build this change management community. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Have
Thank
a great
you.
weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye,
everyone. Thank
everyone.
you,
Cheers, bye.
Teroni.
Everyone, have a
Bye.
lucky Friday. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Tarani. Somebody asked, where can the cards be bought? You can also buy it from the Talent Hub International. Elise can give you those details. If you are interested, you can just ask Elise as well. Thanks, Elise. If you can close the meeting for all of us, that would be great. Thank you. Thanks.